So in this segment, we're going to be discussing Bertie Ahern, who's a former Taoiseach of Ireland, coming in front of a select committee in the UK, claiming that solving the Northern Ireland Protocol dispute is not rocket science. He says if politicians could persuade the IRA to drop their arms in 1998, then how to end the Brexit dispute over Northern Ireland is not rocket science. One of the architects of the Good Friday Agreement has told MPs, and in fairness, he has a point, and he's very direct, so you have to respect that. He stressed that compromise and political leadership was needed. Bertie Ahern called on all sides, leading the UK, the EU, and the DUP, to ditch their red lines and make agreements that would deliver a lasting deal. So the question is, what are the compromises? The EU has made a compromise, as the Irish sea border is not operated by the EU officials, it's operated by UK officials, which does not happen in other places. So this is effectively a trade border for the EU, but it's not managed by them in a sense, not directly. The UK compromise as there's a trade border within the UK. These are, of course, the consequences of Brexit, but where we draw the line on the checks is the question. The problem is the UK's proposals for a green line don't make sense, because if anything dodgy gets in that green lane, the UK will argue it can't be checked because otherwise it won't be a green lane. Like, these people make no sense, or these proposals make no sense. That's the problem. He says, quote, "We can solve this," the former Taoiseach told the House of Commons Ireland Affairs Committee. "I really, really believe this is not rocket science. When you think of the things that we got resolved, we got the IRA to decommission arms, we released prisoners, people who would kill policemen, we reformed the old Royal Ulster Constabulary, and to have a very competent international PSNI, Police Service of Northern Ireland," end quote. So the level of compromise that was done to get the Good Friday Agreement was really something special. So compared with the situation we have now, it should be child's play. But the issue is that back then, Blair was far more of an honest actor than Johnson, Sunak, or Truss. Yes, I know the Iraq and Afghanistan wars made Blair a very untrustworthy person, but do you think any Tory leader in his place would have done things differently? What we had was Johnson and Truss lying and playing games of the protocol. Things that Sunak seems to be doing different. He seems to be more of an honest actor, but we have to wait and see on that. Quote, "That we can't find a way of working out how to get sausages and rashers in the internal market working is beyond comprehension. I think there has to be a solution that is unique to Northern Ireland," quote. That's from the former Taoiseach. The thing is, the protocol itself is unique to Northern Ireland. There are less checks in the Irish Sea versus checks for goods going from Dover into Calais. So that is happening there. The Northern Ireland Protocol is a special arrangement just for Northern Ireland. Ahern said technical solutions were not the answer, and he had not heard any reason from leaders in the EU why a bespoke deal for Northern Ireland was not warranted. But again, the protocol is the bespoke deal. That's the problem. And personally, I think technical solutions can be the answer. It kind of has to be. The EU won't accept a green lane for goods. The EU also won't do a full renegotiation either, which I don't blame them for. I just don't think, these things will happen. So what that means is you have to discuss the areas where you can cut checks with access to the live data. I think that can now happen, but I think Mr. Ahern is desperate not to reopen those old wounds. And I really don't blame him, because he's a guy who would remember how difficult it was to get a compromise done and what was given in order to get the Good Friday agreements delivered. Ahern, the first present or former Irish Prime Minister to give evidence to the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee, said no one was suggesting the solution to the row over the Northern Ireland Protocol was to ignore the unionist community, but there has to be compromises on all sides. And I think the issue is that the DUP don't seem to want to compromise. They won't accept a lot of the aspects of the protocol. Great Britain will move away from EU standards whilst Northern Ireland will go in the other direction as it's part of the EU single market for goods. He says, quote, "In the absence of compromise, we're building a future that will be on quicksand, and that's my concern," end quote, he told the committee. He recalled the bravery of the leaders in both nationalist and unionist committees in Northern Ireland in the 1990s, led by the now deceased John Hume and David Trimble, and he reminded MPs on the committee that the compromise they made was successful because they led to the end of the violence. They decided back in 1998 that the deal was, quote, "was not perfect, but it was fair," he said. That was a brave move by them all. He suggested that kind of leap of faith was needed again 25 years on from peace. Northern Ireland was still different to the rest of the UK. I really want to see an end to the saga. With Sunak, it does feel different. Will we finally see something happen? with the protocol talks. I'm not sure, but the issue is the DUP. Will they accept? Will they accept the changes? Will they finally accept the Northern Ireland Protocol with reduced checks? I don't know. I don't think that will happen. I don't think they will accept it, and that brings us back to square one. The only issue will be, well, the Westminster government will now be pushing the DUP back into Stormont rather than egging them on in their actions, which it seemed like Liz Truss and Johnson were doing. But the problem is, if the DUP don't accept it, we're back to square one with Stormont being closed and kind of both communities being really, really frustrated by the situation. I've read the DUP 7 checks, their 7 rules or whatever that they have for the protocol. It just won't happen. So the question is, can you get the DUP to move? I don't know, given that their voter base is very fanatic, it seems, to put it lightly, and they really want to see an end to the protocol, and they will do it by any means, and that is terrifying. But I do have a lot of respect for the former Taoiseach, coming out into England, talking to the select committee and saying that it's not rocket science, but there has to be compromise. That's the key here, and that's what I've been saying from the start. Really, the EU have compromised, the British government have compromised, but the DUP have not compromised, and that's one of the issues. And I don't know where we go from here. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.